Hello, this is a special episode of Americast, part of our series taking a look at Donald Trump's first 100 days in office since he returned to the White House as President of the United States of America. Today, Trump's war on woke.
We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military. And our country will be woke no longer.
So, does America need DEI? I'm Matt Chorley in the Americast studio in London.
I'm Marianna Spring, also in what we call, Matt, the worldwide headquarters of Americast.
I don't feel like I'm qualified for that sort of...
And I'm Justin Webb, sitting next to Marianna and not taking sides on that issue.
OK, so let's start with a real example of DEI. Well, first of all, what is DEI, the acronym?
Diversity, equity and inclusion. They said
so
together in an inclusive manner.
Very inclusive. So DEI has been cut. Justin, you've got an example for us.
Yeah, let's take a specific example. Let's take the example of Walmart. So Walmart, the biggest private employer in the world, they've invested millions in DEI programs. They did it after the Black Lives Matter protests back in 2020. They're also the biggest private employer of black Americans. And like companies across America, they have been cutting a lot of their diversity programs. Let's listen to Mark Morial talking to CBS Mornings. So he's from the civil rights organization, the National Urban League, which has been working with Walmart for 2 decades, including on a program to get more black women-owned suppliers into Walmart stores.
As a 20-year partner of Walmart, none of us got a heads up that they were even reevaluating or reconsidering their corporate diversity or equal opportunity initiatives. Here's what's important to remember. This company was under recriminations, lawsuits, complaints 20 years ago. The CEO at that time, Tony and Adriana, Lee Scott, led a remarkable transformation of this company over the last 20 years. And they went from worst to first class when it comes to diversity. The idea that they would throw all of that away without any careful consultation with their partners. We need American business leaders to stand up for American values. And one value of this nation is equal opportunity. That's all diversity, equity, and inclusion is about. It's about creating a level playing field for all.
But it's not just Walmart, Justin. You've got Amazon, Disney, Meta, Google, Target, McDonald's all rolling back their diversity program.
Because they say it's not about creating a level playing field. It's the opposite of creating a level playing field. And this is the point the Trump administration makes, and the point that actually hits home with a lot of Americans. I think, frankly, one of the reasons why he was elected is that people are uncomfortable with programs that seem to suggest some races, some individuals, because we are talking, of course, about individuals in the most individualistic country on earth. Some individuals should be promoted because of the group they are in rather than because of their own talents and character. And that is something that the Trump administration has played on as an idea, and it is something that has hit home.
The thing is, though, and it's probably worth thinking about why this happened when it happened, and that was broadly associated with these Black Lives Matter protests we've mentioned that happened in 2020. They were after George Floyd, a black man, was killed by a police officer, and they sparked a huge amount of protest, and protests that ended up then sparking a wider conversation about racism in the United States. And it was in reaction to that some of these companies said, right, OK, how are we going to prove our commitment, I guess, to not being racist to our employees and to ensuring that everybody gets opportunities.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's obviously a difference between the state and their responsibility to treat everyone equally, you know, American citizens all being viewed the same and treated access to the same services, and companies who ultimately answer to their shareholders. There's clearly a difference between a company recognising, actually, we might be missing out on some talent here. If we just keep hiring white people, then we maybe should look at our hiring policies. But then also there's the suspicion that in response to some of the Black Lives Matter thing, it's a PR thing. You know, every company having to be seen to be doing something. We see it in the UK as well, where banks suddenly change all their logos to the Pride logo. Does that make any difference to the way...
It's both directions, isn't
it?
I mean, private companies, you're exactly right, aren't you? Private companies do what seems to be the right thing to do by way of their
Well, that's kind
shareholders,
of what-
others to make money.
That's kind of what's happening here, you could argue, which is that like all of this stuff is just reactive and in response to whatever the political kind of mood of the moment is. But what was happening around the Black Lives Matter protest was people almost like actively calling out companies quite specifically and saying, hold on a second, what, you guys are not doing anything. And I think it was like the fear around that contributed to some of the decision making, which wasn't necessarily that thought through,
Yeah,
but maybe
they-
had that kind
they
of
were terrified.
They would argue.
They were
"Oh, we
terrified.
So
thought it
what's
through
going
later."
on now then with companies rowing back on this? Is it just to curry favour with Donald Trump? Is it because they've realised that maybe the American mood isn't where it was? Is it because they just think, why are we spending all this money on these vanity projects? Is it because they think, well, actually, we've done quite a lot of work on this, we've changed our work? What's driving this sudden rush to change?
I think it's all of those things, actually. And there is an element of needing to curry favour with the Trump administration, because if you are, I mean, you think of the big companies that may have dealings with or may need things from the administration, or may fear the administration, given what Donald Trump is capable of doing and the power that he seems to have accreted to himself, then I think it is reasonable. I was talking to someone the other day whose company is advising people who deal with the White House to get rid of their pronouns in their emails. So some of the younger staff have their pronouns in their emails. And they said, don't do it, because if you deal with the White House and you do that, you draw attention to us as a kind of culturally separate, different institution with different values and a different way of looking at things. And that, I think, is interesting. But much more widely, there is a mood anyway, never mind people who want to deal with the White House, there is a mood anyway in the United States that some of the things that people have been doing and saying, they don't need to do and say anymore.
I think something that's quite interesting is if the argument is, oh, okay, well, Donald Trump just says, everyone kind of make up your own minds. We're not going to tell you what to think or what to do or what have you. When there's stuff like, for example, all of the action that's been taken around the Department of Education, which is to be no more, and like all of the conversation around withdrawing federal funding from schools and higher education institutions because they are not agreeing to a particular sort of set of values you want them to. Lots of the universities like Harvard have taken issue with, hang on a second, you've basically told us that people who are hostile to American values like need to be kind of dealt with, and we're not very comfortable with that. Like in some ways that also feels a bit like telling people how to think.
It's a bit policing people's
and so
language and thought.
Actually, is there a risk here as well of the kind of overcorrection thing, which is like something that was overcorrected then overcorrects the other way?
Yeah,
and,
I think that's a good point.
And where do you kind of end up?
It's a very good point. And, you know, the idea of the Trump administration being desperately keen on freedom of speech, when you think of the way that he potentially goes after people from his former administration who are facing real legal difficulties as a result simply of things that they said.
I suppose it goes to what is a meritocracy, like the great American dream that everyone can get on in America. It means
mess with that dream and you get into trouble.
Exactly.
Even if it's a dream, a myth, whatever, but mess with it and you better have a good reason to do it. That's what the Democrats
But can the dream benefit
discovered.
everyone at once?
Exactly. You don't want to be overlooked because you're black, but equally you don't want to be over-promoted, made a special case of.
Well, you don't want yourself to be undermined with people saying, oh, the only reason you got this job is because of who you are, when it's like, no, actually, I'm really good at my job.
And then if it's the overreach thing, you get into a situation where you have white people. You don't want white people to feel like they've been overlooked.
The kind of American thinking about who an American is that all that matters is their character, not the colour of their skin or their racial background.
On the dream point, I think the complexity of the dream is that the starting point for everyone is not the same.
Yeah.
Like America has a history of deep-rooted racism. On the dream point, I think the complexity of the dream is that the starting point for everyone is not the same.
Yeah.
Like America has a history of deep-rooted racism, which is in its pretty recent history, in terms of the treatment of black people, in terms of slavery, in terms of all of those things. And so you can see, if you actually kind of track the like historical flashpoints, you can kind of see why we've got here now.
So what happens then? And looking ahead, we've had 100 days of Donald Trump declaring war on DEI. Where is the pendulum going to end up settling? Pendulum, if it's swung one way, does it come back? Where does the pendulum end up settling?
I don't think it comes back. It it stays, I reckon, on the Trump side, on the Republican side, at least in the foreseeable future. I mean, who knows in a decade? But I don't think the Democratic Party is up for the fight. I don't think the Democratic Party wants to have the fight next time round.
It does feel as if on this, of all the issues we're covering this week of this season, this is one where Donald Trump has sort of won the national argument, Marianna. We saw that advert in the campaign, Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. The Democrats are not going to go into an election where someone can have that thrown at them again. Yeah,
I think that actually, if you look at particularly the effective social media campaigning of Donald Trump's team and supporters and some of the, we've spoken about it a lot, but the kind of podcasters, the tech bros, everyone else he got on board, I think, yes, like in lots of ways, Donald Trump succeeded in activating or reaching or unlocking a group of people, including kind of young men, including people who are maybe not that traditionally interested in current affairs, who thought, hang on a second, I'm not so sure about this and I don't feel like I've been able to express my view without being accused of being discriminatory or racist or sexist or what have you. The thing I do think, though, is that, and this is the issue of when you win a war on social media in lots of ways and you win a narrative war, there's also an element of, like, some of this conversation is quite exhausting. And I just wonder to what extent people might get exhausted over, like, it's almost like neither side wins. And the average American voter is like, again, I care about loads of other stuff, like the economy.
There's a risk for Trump, the people who are exhausted by woke become exhausted by the war on woke and just stop.
And it's just like, can you just stop all the drama? Like, I just kind of want everyone to be friends, and I don't want the drama.
For quite a lot of other
Stop all the drama.
Stop all the drama.
Marianna's running for office.
We'd have nothing else to talk about.
I love a bit of drama, though.
Well, we'll talk about some of the other drama on some of the other episodes, but we'll have to leave it there for now. It's brilliant being back in the Americast gang with Marianna and Justin. Remember, you can listen to the whole of our series on BBC Sounds or wherever you get your podcast. Just search for Americast to find all the episodes.